hear me? Okay. We're going to get started here. So if everybody wants to grab a seat, make sure you sign in, grab a little packet from Ben over there. Thank you all for coming. My name's Danny Rotter. I'm the project manager for the city. Just wanted to say thanks for coming out. We have a couple things we're going to go over. If I can stop saying we'll get through it. Want to present our 30% design. We've got a fly-through video that I think looks pretty good. We're going to take some public comment. You got the little polling pad things we'll go through with Steve. Mike's going to go through a little bit of the timeline of where we've been. We'll look at kind of the overview of the design. We'll talk specifically about Carson and Curry on the improvements, how the theming results. We had a theming meeting in April, how those results applied. And then we'll do some polling on some of the materials selections. And then we'll talk about the next steps. We also have Jeff Bean from Q&D is involved. They're the CMAR contractor. We're going through it's called the CMAR, Construction Manager at Risk process. He's going to have to jet a little early, but if we have any questions that pop up, he'll be here, and he'll be out throughout the entire process to talk about construction staging and so forth. We got Mike Bennett from Loomis. He'll be going through some stuff. We got Steve Knoll from Design Workshop. So with that, I'll give it to Mike, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Danny. My name is Mike Bennett. I'm a project manager for Loomis & Associates, and I'm leading up the design team for this project. I want to go through a quick little history of where we've been this evening, quick recap. So it started out back in 2005. Carson City commissioned some studies to revitalize downtown. That was revisited in 2014, and that ultimately ended up as part of being funded through a part of a 1/8 cent sales tax, as well as public works money for utility replacement. 3rd Street is also part of this project, and it is being funded through a mix of redevelopment funds and a portion of a private donation. So we have a project that's funded. Moving forward to February of 2015, the city issued a request for proposals from design teams. Ultimately was selected Loomis & Associates, teamed with HDR, Design Workshop, and PK Electrical. In April of this year, we had an open house to go over theming, how this project, ultimately the style, the look that it was going to take. In May of this year, Q&D was selected, as Danny had mentioned, as the CMAR contractor, getting them on board early on in the process so they're aware of what the design team's thinking. The design team is aware of what makes most sense from a construction standpoint, keeping everybody on the same page so when we do get to construction, ideally the process moves much more smoothly. So that brings us to where we are today, which is a complete 30% design has been submitted to the city, and we're presenting that to you today for the first time, as well as the video fly-through that Danny had mentioned. So the next slide, oh, sorry, one more. Going out of order a little bit. I wanted to just do a quick recap of the design before Steve gets going on the fly-through. Let you know what we took into account. We talked about it at the theming meeting last time around. Public participation, our intent of these meetings is to keep you informed, listen and acknowledge concerns and aspirations of you, and to provide feedback on how your input influenced our decisions in going through this design process. The results of the theming meeting last time around was pretty overwhelmingly the historic theme was chosen. So Steve is going to go through how that influenced his thought process on selecting materials and colors, textures, and overall style that you're going to see tonight to vote on. And just a brief overview of what the project looks like. The right-of-way from building face to building face is about 80 feet. The new cross-section is going to push those sidewalks out that right now are 5, 6, 7 feet wide. They're going to go 20 feet wide either side in areas without parking. In areas where we do have parallel parking, they'll be 12 foot with 8 foot parallel parking stalls, again, either side. We'll have 2 5-foot bike lanes, one each direction, 2 10-foot through lanes, and a 10-foot continuous center turn / emergency access lane. All of these improvements boil down to improved pedestrian safety, walkability, and vehicle safety. We integrate our design standards, our the latest AASHTO requirements, METCD requirements, and ADA for accessibility in a public right-of-way. We've also, what you're going to see tonight incorporates approximately 40 new parking spaces. We have bus stops for both northbound and southbound loops near City Hall. We're completely redoing the storm sewer, sanitary sewer, water systems, as well as upgrading event power and lighting downtown. The layout has 110 new trees. We are removing the center medians, but replacing with double the trees at least that are there today. And overall, we have a lot more opportunities for outdoor seating, spaces for public art, and just general walkability. So that, from the engineering side, is a real brief overview. And I want to turn it over to Steve with Design Workshop, and he's going to go through more of just talk about the theming aspects of it.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. Good seeing some familiar faces from April. How many people attended the April work session, one of the two? So we have about maybe 2/3, so the third of you that haven't, glad you could make it. We'll get into what these mean later on. As Mike mentioned, we're at 30% design. What that means from a design perspective is that we've got our drawings to the point where we've identified where the roads are, where the paving, where some of the seating will occur. Tonight is really about now dialing it down a little bit deeper and understand what kind of materials and the look we want to have for it. So the opportunity of taking what we thought was, what we had preferred was a historic element, how does that then start to play into the final design as we move forward from here? Just to reiterate what the project area is, Carson Street from 5th all the way down to William, and then the section of Curry Street that you see there at the upper part of the image. And then just for a sense of scale, we've dropped in what the outline of the future Capitol Mall project would be. So let you kind of understand the scale of that as it relates to the corridor in the area we're working with right now. So when you walked in, you saw that long illustrative. It's about 16 feet long. That'll be out there after the meeting, and that's probably going to be where if you have additional questions and discussions, we had probably a good hour after the earlier meeting and some really good dialogue. So those will be up there after the meeting to talk about. We just, because it was so long, we just kind of cut it in two sections here. This image shows you from 5th Street down to Telegraph. And the next one's north. I should probably take this out. Telegraph down to William. And when you go out there later on, you're going to start seeing some opportunities for public art, for just places to spill out on the street, as well as for landscaping and enhancing the corridor. So this is a small version of what you'll see out there, but by all means, we want to have those discussions out there. The beauty about a corridor like this, you have the opportunity to look at it in some continuity, as well as some actually creating some different areas that kind of might be expressed in the paving and the sidewalks and the materials like that. In this case, we kind of took a step back as a team. We said, what's different between these different segments? So just for the sake of kind of defining those, the first one we call is the park, and that's really associated, the first section. It's basically the government buildings or the open, you want to go back? It's from 5th Street to Musser. It's where you're going to see the government buildings, and they already have the open space. That's already a quality of the area. The historic buildings that are in the area front onto that, so they have a front onto the park theme or feeling to them. Not a big number of buildings, private buildings, but private businesses, but there's enough to kind of have that relationship. It has the 3rd Street Plaza being introduced as far as a new public amenity that's going to be there for events throughout the season, permanent stage, those type of things. So there's no longer the shutting down the street and coming in with a temporary stage. So it's going to really be a nice community space. And it'll also provide the theming, or this project improves over the next number of years, this will be successful. The city will continue that effort. It really sets the stage of what might happen down from there. So this picture kind of shows, this is all the public park, as we call it. This is just an extension of this. So very simple landscape solutions, finding opportunities outside of these different state buildings to introduce plazas or places that might have public art, as well as reconnecting all of this. So from this area down has a little bit different feeling than the next section. Actually, just go back one more time. And then, of course, this is 3rd Street with the stage and re-enhancing that. There'll be pedestrian only. Of course, there'll be access for emergency vehicles if needed. So next one we call the district, and not necessarily to name it that, but just to recognize that this is a spot where, you know, you do have the 80-foot that Mike described from building to building face, pretty much all dominated by built historic structures, new structures have retrofitting. But it really is a different feeling than the park space because it is confined, and it's probably going to be the area where you're going to see a lot more of the types of paving, seating, and stuff that we talked about integrated with the sidewalk than you might see in some of the other places. It has, as I mentioned before, with that addition of the Capitol Mall project, it really creates that grid of almost a 4-block in both directions. So it's really kind of an exciting area where now you don't just have a linear thing, you have 2 or 3 blocks deep. And as I said, a lot of the greatest amount of the pedestrian improvements will probably be here. And you can see Curry Street from here, kind of makes this a 2-block deep. A lot more of these areas for things to break out. We have opportunities for bus stops, get the transit involved, and really kind of creating that connectivity between Curry and Carson Street much stronger. And then finally, this last section is called the transition, and the reason for that is because it really is the opportunity to take this idea and set it in motion to the north. Yeah, I've turned around. But keep in mind that this is the area where there's a lot of vehicle dominated or reliant business, so to speak, where there's still curb cuts off of Highway 50. So you have to respect that they do have to have their business operating and moving in and out. So it has a little different feeling. But once keeping in mind that if those businesses redevelop in some other fashion and decide they don't need that entrance off of 50, there's an opportunity then, Carson, yeah, I'm glad he's here. I still say 50 because I'm not on that other road. I'm going through town all the time. Have the opportunity to introduce kind of the theming and the stuff that happened in the district or some other areas because now you have more area to work with. But if that doesn't happen, we still have some continuity with the street trees, the landscaping, and that type of stuff to keep the corridor whole. So once again, there's a lot of these driveways. These aren't here, but there's access into some of these buildings and streets. We have to respect that. We can't cut off access and the livelihood of those businesses. So we have about a 4 to 5 minute video. So if you just want to sit back and I'll maybe augment the video with a little bit of talking through here, but not much. Okay. So what you see here in the middle is opportunity because those first 3 blocks, there's no reason to take a turn anywhere. So we can actually introduce a different type of paving there. So you don't have just 3 lanes of black asphalt. You have some other element and material that help to create that space. Now we take you into what is now the plaza for 3rd Street. There's the stage of some sort. It's not fully designed yet, but just like you know, it'll be there. Do you see the very active kid somewhere? And then looking back toward the state buildings, you can see how that really has that park feeling, trying to bring that into the space. There'll be parking, as Mike described, throughout the corridor or throughout the area along Carson. They're usually in groups of 2. That's kind of a city standard. There's maybe 1 or 2 occasions we have 3. But we'll be working with the business owners and the property owners to make sure that that's kind of the final location, how that works. We're able to maintain all the existing trees in front of the state buildings, so that wasn't critical, and that was important for what the public said last time. And this up here is going to show you one of those gestures of a space outside the building. Create a little enclave. This could be a spot for public art, for additional seating. So really at the level right now of establishing some of the framework and now picking materials and then introducing some elements as we move forward to 60%. So this is the next section we would kind of term the district. This is where we have the 80-foot to 80-foot buildings. So it really, you can tell it's much more dominant by the architecture than the other space was. This is kind of an interesting thing where this is a flush curb, so we're able to introduce the crossing to different areas without having to have directional handicap ramps, and it makes it much more smoother and inviting. Now, these sections, we couldn't put that paving in because they're short blocks and there's a lot of cars that will be making the left-hand turns in different directions. So as much we'd like to continue that through right now because of the traffic volumes. That doesn't mean over time if things have adjusted, but for right now, to kind of respect that movement needed in those short blocks. So just a frame of reference, this is across from the Nugget where that empty lot will soon have a parking structure with retail that'll face on to Carson. So it'll add another dimension of retail and shopping and commercial along that corridor, along this section, I mean. So now we're moving in the other sections. We start to see, obviously gas station needs to come off the road, other business off of this side. So there's a transitional piece. If this ever became something else, they just kind of have that opportunity to then be part of the other theming, much more richer if they actually want pedestrian areas out in front of their businesses. But for right now, it's probably not necessarily an interest to them, given the fact they have cars moving in and off the street. And we're getting close to where we'd reach the end of it. So we're able to get trees throughout the corridor for the most part. There's a couple parcels where it's hard because of all the movement of vehicles, but that's not to say in the future that that can happen as well. As we mentioned, we're also doing Curry Street. We did not do the fly-through on that street, but here's a couple snapshots of what that would look like. And these are the same images you saw out in front as well, and then we have the plans versions as well. Oh, you want to watch it again? You'll put me to sleep. Okay, and another picture on Curry Street. Go back. And Telegraph. Keep in mind there's some planters there at Telegraph at the corner there. Those will remain as is. They're not intended to be removed or altered. But in some of the illustration you might see, they might be not graphically shown correctly, but those are to remain in place as they are today. So getting back to what we did in April, we had the theming. We talked about historic, transportation. The third was the government, and did we have a fourth, environment? I think we just had three. Oh, no, we had no preference. Oh, that's a no preference. So those are the three that we had people weigh in on, and the overwhelming was historic, but there's a certain sort of historic that we thought was a little bit more important, not the historic like rough and ready, Virginia City type stuff, but more of a historic that's related to the Capitol and the things you have going on here. And so it was coined historic elegance and used that as kind of our theme as well as the materials as we match up. And I'll give Vern that credit again in the back, because after that first meeting he goes, you know what, this is what it is. You're right. So keypad polling, we're going to get right into it. So if you have not used these before, or if you have, and this is a reminder, here it is. You get one vote. Tonight's not like you have to vote for 3 out of 5 or something like that. It's just one vote of your preferred option. If you vote and you want to change your mind, by all means, just vote again, and it'll change it automatically. So you're not going to multiply it. It'll just override the earlier one. When we get to the next slide, it'll be the first thing you vote on. Once you make your push of your vote, you should see a green light. If you see a red light come on, it means that there's something that's not activated, so we'll just get you a new one. We have plenty over there. So that's the first thing we need to do. And this first question, everybody needs to vote on it, only because we need to know how many people are actually voting, or in the room. We don't necessarily you have to vote on everything, but just this very first one, we need to know how many have actually picked one of these up so we can kind of gauge that as we close it. So we'll pull up the question. We'll give you a fair amount of time, not a whole lot, maybe 20, 30 seconds. We'll kind of watch that number go up, And if we're getting close to that number, we'll give you a 5-second warning and close the voting on that particular question. I got to tell you, the earlier group, they were fast. I mean, I'd look at them, like, man, they're already done. So you guys have got a little bit of work to do here. All right, first question. Yeah, go ahead.
If you have a question of a clarification of, hey, what's this question asking, give us those. If you have a specific question, we're all going to be around out in the hallway afterwards. So if you have something specific you want to talk about, a specific block you have a question on, you want to ask about traffic, we also have other city staff here. So we're going to try and get through these kind of polling questions, and then we'll kind of end it at that. And if you have specifics, we'll take all those questions after.
Thanks for that, because there were some questions. And with in mind, so there will be probably questions just before we go to polling. Like if we're showing you paving, if you have a question, ask it then if it's relevant to the image. But if it's how it's applied and all that, then we'll probably take you and have those discussions outside, or, not out there. We can talk about it here after the polling's over. Okay, the first question, everybody votes on this one. How did you get to this meeting? Did you come by bike, number 1, by foot 2, your personal vehicle? If you rode your horse here is number 4, or if you took a transit or a cab. Did everybody vote? Yes? Okay, so this is the number we want to try to reach as best possible, this 35 each time. So, yeah, again, you don't have to vote, but this one we need you to vote on. So we're going to close the poll, and 94% came by car. We had 3% rode by horse. And the first one, this one's 6%, so I think we have to put hitching posts in this corridor, right? Horse parking. Okay, next one. How long have you lived in Carson City? There's your options: 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 20, 20 plus. You were born here, or you don't live in Carson City. Close enough. We got 34 out of 35. So 20. That's a good distribution. I think earlier it was a lot more in the 20 years plus. Yeah. So, all right. Yep. How old are you? You have to be truthful. This thing will not tell us who voted what. Seriously, it won't. Forgot to mention that these have a GPS unit, so you can't take them home. I mean, if you really want one, we can sell you one. Okay, 34. We're going to go ahead and close it. Wow, look at that, 3% under 18. Raise your hand. I can see you. Thank you for coming. Why are you attending this meeting? To see the progress of the project. Share your thoughts on the 30% design. For those who have not participated before, this is your first meeting, or if you don't know, then we can talk with you after the meeting as well. Oh, everybody voted. Okay, you 20% that are here to learn more, welcome those who have been participating. Obviously, we're glad you're back. And then how often do you visit downtown? Are you here daily? A few times a week? Once a week? A few times a month? Once a month? You only pass through, or you never here and you just happen to find this meeting tonight somehow? That's good. Okay, now we're going to get into kind of the meat of the polling here to get your feedback on some of these materials. And when we say materials, we're talking about the things you walk on, the things you sit on, the things you look at, the things that help you protect you from the vehicles, those type of stuff. The first image is actually the one you have in front of you is a little incorrect because we didn't have the brick paving in when we sent this to the printer. So we realized we left that out, and that's an important one to include because it's been there on the previously. So basically, you have 4 options here to pick from. And the idea here is to think of...
The concept.
Yeah. It's just the concept about how to, the type of material. And this is really going to be in the accent areas. This isn't going to be everywhere in the walkways. So there's going to be strategic areas. We're going to use this material to bring out either the architecture or to define intersections, those type of things. The one in the upper right-hand corner, that banding that you see, you're not really necessarily concerned about the banding itself in relationship to the paving, but do recognize that any one of these are going to be fronting on opportunities such as backer curbs or other concrete elements. So it is gives you a visual about how some of these might actually, abut up to those materials. You have a question?
On the number 4 and the bricks, do they lay pretty flat? I mean, you're not going to stub a toe or catch a sandal or something?
Do you want to stub a toe?
No.
Okay.
No,
No, they'll have to be smooth, accessible, AD accessibility. So all of that's kind of a given with any of these. So you guys want to vote? Okay. Need 6 more voters, or we'll close it in 5 seconds. Oh, got one more? 3, 2, 1. Okay. A little bit different from the earlier group, right? So we have a chore cut out for us to figure that one out. Okay, next one is just concrete paving, and keep in mind this is probably what you're going to see the majority of the area of. So it's going to be a variation of number 1, which would be a fairly simple concrete score pattern of some sort, down to maybe some interest with how you might score different kind of concrete. Number 3 is a two-tone. And with the two-tone in mind, keep that we can put color in all the concrete as well. So it's not that you have to have the 2 colors, but that's really reflecting more of a color concrete. Number 4 is kind of a concrete form liner of what would depict paving or I mean not paving, old boards. And so an example, we're going to be using that out in front of the St. Charles Hotel. I mean, that's a specific application. So even if you don't find, if number 4 doesn't come up high on the list, we're still going to be using that in very strategic areas. And then 5 is just like an aggregate paving where you basically embed aggregate and then you blast it off, and it has kind of it's rough, but it's not, you won't stub your toe on it. It's not that big of a piece.
Is number 4 wood or is it actual?
It's concrete. Yeah, that's stained, and it's a form liner that makes it look like wood.
Have you put thought into this as to what's going to hold up best when the salt hits it and snow and ice? Because I think we should be thinking about that.
They all have to hold up to that. So anything we select, there's ways to make that work. Yeah.
Number 3 explicit has 3 different colors of concrete?
Well, yeah, there's this one, the band, this, and this.
Right, so you could actually make that 4 colors of concrete if a certain lot required it or a certain building front required it, and you could actually get very creative with that particular type in different areas?
Yeah, we could. I think we'll be limited to what we want to do too much of that. I think if there's an opportunity expressed, let's say, a certain area, by all means, we can look at that.
I opened the poll already.
Oh, poll's open, sorry.
Fat fingers.
5 seconds. We only need 2 more votes. We have to go back and look. We're like, what's 4? Okay, the next is walls. These walls are going to be for retaining, holding landscaping, let them grow, as well as seat walls. There's also opportunity to use that for some sort of, embosking information about things. So a lot of different ways you use the walls. Number 1 is basically a wall with some sort of material on the top that's going to hold the salt and the snow and the other stuff. Number 2 is you guys recognize that, so that we have that. It stays in place, but if there's an opportunity, a preference to do more of that. 3 is a simple poured-in-place concrete wall, smooth finish. Starts to get a little bit more toward what you probably see in the Capitol. 4, I think you've seen that around your community. 5 is a similar version of that, but just a different reveal to it. And then 6 is also something you probably already seen here in Carson City. You have a question?
What's the difference between 2 and 4? They're both brick.
Yeah, a little different application. I think
Is
it's
it the design or just the material we're talking about?
the materials, yeah. So,
The sandstone.
yeah, exactly. So as Danny's telling me, this is sandstone finish with the brick, and then that's more of a smooth
We're
with
not
the,
just talking about the top.
yeah, it's kind of the combination of that.
So will these be placed sort of depending on what buildings they're in front of, whether you use the limestone or the brick or all that?
Yeah, there'll be cases where you can do that. Like even when I'm thinking about the state buildings, they have a different feeling to it. So that wall may be a little bit different, but we still want to kind of have a palette of material that's going to be throughout. So it doesn't look like it's just too much eclectic and something just happens to be specific to that property. You guys ready to vote? Okay, we're going to close it. That's pretty consistent with the lunch group crowd. Next one, pedestrian buffer options. This is kind of an interesting way of saying it, but there's places where the sidewalks are going to come up to the back of curb. There's places where you're going to be crossing the streets. So the opportunity to provide some aesthetic buffers that allow that safety feeling, as well as reinforce kind of the design theme. So number 1 and 2 are different versions of some sort of raised planters that might provide that. 3 gets into something you've had before. 4 is what you see out in front of some of the state buildings. And this picture is really looking at the vertical fence. But once again, we're not taking this down the corridor again and do what we had before. There might be an area to prevent someone, let's say, from stepping out, that might be the piece. So it's really limited use of how these are. They're not intended to fortify or restrict people from moving. There will be opportunities or situations where we need to do that. So planters, something along those lines. Those bollards, it's a little more capital and that feeling than the historic, I'd call it historic fence that you have there now. Guys ready to vote? Moving right along, bike racks. So on the bike racks, we're thinking about a few things here. Not the actual decal like a bike, like you see in these. They could be something else. They could be something historic. So we can work with that. What we're looking more at is the feeling of that. So in this case, that simple bar that happens to go there. This would be a single standalone that you might see throughout different areas. This one is another bike rack that you see in other communities. You guys are familiar with this one, and this one is pretty standard in a lot of communities as well. Someone asked earlier how many bikes each one holds, and we're not voting on that because it could be that you just have one of these by itself somewhere, or you might have 4 of these or 3 of those. So it depends on the situation and where we need the bikes. So don't let the number of those kind of persuade you on how to vote. Any questions on what I'm asking you to think about on the bike rack?
So like number 3, you could have a different something in there besides bicycle.
Correct. Guys ready? Well, you guys are fast. Okay, we're only up to 28. We'll give you about 5 more seconds. Usually we're 35, so 7 are opting not to vote on that one. Maybe they're not bikers. They don't ride bikes. That's true, yeah. Well, and, by all means, if you got another example you want to bring to us, I mean, we're still open for that. Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, we can make things historic. Some of them you can't, like that simple one, so. Okay, next one is, I heard someone mention trash receptacles. So we took off the number 6 that you have in your picture because we realized that we only had 5 for you to vote on. But that wasn't necessarily the reason. The reason is that I don't think any of us in this room would pick this one. But the idea was to say, are you interested in having trash cans we're recycling next to one another? Whatever these are. So before we vote let's just show our hands, interested in the recycling, moving forward a little bit more, or kind of one can takes all. Don't be shy. You can recycle if you want. Okay. All right. Yep, about 50-50. Earlier it was probably 90% people, so it was pretty much interested in doing that.
That's a nice concept, but I don't think it'll work. I mean,
Well,
you go down to Costco and they've got 3 bins and
everyone throws it in one. Well, these get to be very interesting when people want to make a little extra money. Those will be empty by themselves. Okay, so these are the 5 you have, and keep in mind again that we're not necessarily concerned about what this looks like. This could have a theme to it as well. We're really looking about the looks of them, even the color. You may like this one, but we'll do it in black. So don't worry about the color on these. It's just really more the form and how you could actually visualize them being along the street.
Does Ford have a cigarette butt on top?
Yeah, but don't worry about that. No cigarette butts right now. We're not voting on that. So assume it with or without. That'll be something that we have to figure out at a later date working with the city and how they're going to operate that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and vote. You guys know your trash cans. Everybody vote on that one. Okay, last kind of thing we're voting on is going to be benches. All 5 benches, whatever we have, are going to have to be meet current accessibility standards. So don't let maybe some of the widths of these things vote you one way or the other. It's just more the idea and what it looks like. 1 and 2 are really trying to draw off some of the older wood type of structure construction. 3 is a little bit more contemporary, but actually works with some of the walls and stuff, as well as the lower one. And then this one, I think you recognize you already have some of these in your community. Any thoughts before we vote on that? Okay, let's try it. I think we're good. What's that? Okay, last image we have before we ask you a few closing questions. Recognizing public art is still part of this process as far as identifying spots for it to be located when the funding is available. But there's really 2, as we talked about before, integrating the artwork itself within the streetscape materials we just voted on. So how that theme comes out will be what we'll be moving forward with. But then also recognizing there are the site-specific pieces of work that would be commissioned and move forward when funding, or there's some other opportunity that's available, like maybe someone come back from Burning Man wants to, I shouldn't say that, right? Sparks has a problem with that one. No, you know what I'm saying. That'll be the opportunities for the future. But we have designed into the streetscape places where that can happen. So some closing questions here. How did you find out about this meeting the first time? You heard it multiple times, just from different sources. Just what's the first way you heard about the meeting tonight?
Carson Proud, other social media.
Yeah, and Carson Proud, if you heard it through Carson Proud, put that number 6 as other social media.
How about TV? Was on the news this morning.
Oh, what would that? This? Yeah, I do 7. Wow, it was on Reno News, huh?
Yeah.
That's nice. How many people saw it on TV? Yeah, do you-
Oh, wait.
so there's about 10 of you, okay. It's good to know. Okay, we're going to, Carson is, now is 6.
Carson Proud.
Proud, I mean, yeah.
Carson
Where's-
Proud is 6.
what's Carson?
Carson now, it's another news website.
Oh, sorry. Too many Carsons for me. Okay, one more. All right, we got it. Newspaper media, word of mouth, that's good. So your email is working a little bit. Next question. How would you rate the city's efforts at keeping the community engaged on this project? Okay, next one. How would you rate the information presented tonight or today? Tonight, I guess. And keep in mind that, just so you know, that video will be posted on the website so you can have others view it and on Carson Proud, that will be? Okay. Next, while you may not agree with the results of this meeting regarding your voting, do you feel that this process is heading in the right direction? Okay, with that in mind, a couple closing things, and I'll pass this back on to Mike. I mean to Mike, right? When you leave, make sure you drop these off, or else we'll be tracking you down somehow. You're welcome to take these materials home if you want. Those are yours. And then, again, thank you for coming out tonight, and we'll be out after this meeting. We'll be out in the hall to talk about things, or we'll probably be running the video again in here as well.
Thank you, Steve. I just wanted to come back full circle. We talked about when we got started, where we've been, how we got here today. We've been asking you getting more specific than the theming meeting, but things that kind of are looking at the whole corridor, trash cans, paving types, and so on. As we move forward toward the 60%, we're going to start meeting, the design team is going to start meeting with all the business and property owners on a one-on-one basis or block-by-block basis to hear any concerns or complaints or wants that you have. We're going to meet with everybody today if you have other specific things that you want to talk about. And we're moving all that information together toward our 60% design, which is due at the beginning of September. But before we get there, we're presenting this presentation to the RACC, the RAC, the RTC, as well as the Board of Supervisors. Board of Supervisors, July 16th. After we finish with the 60%, obviously we'll roll to 90%. That project is due, or that submittal is due by the beginning of November. Again, we'll be coming forth to the RAC and the RTC meeting, as well as the Board of Supervisors on the 90%, and with final design coming in at the end of this year. I'm telling you all these things because we're going to constantly be having public outreach, attending the public meetings, getting feedback from citizens and business owners whenever we can. When we do come by and we meet with the business and property owners, we're going to bring the contractor with us. We're going to hear the concerns you have. I have a restaurant. I can't be out of water between this time and this time. I have a business that has one access. I can't be out of access during the day. We'll be hearing those concerns, and we'll be developing a phasing plan that addresses all of those things. Ultimately, the plan is for construction to start late winter 16, early spring, so late February, early March of next year. With our plan right now is to be done by October 1st, so we have Nevada Day 2016 rolling down the new project. So that's all I have to say. Danny?
I'll just mention, if you haven't already, check out carsonproud.com. Follow it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that. that's going to be the best place. Any information that I have, I'm going to try and get to there. There's a project page on there that we're going to post the video, some of the snapshots out here, the full corridor, and that. We also have an email set up, genericplanning@carson.org, if you want to send in comments. Also, my email is right there, drotter@carson.org. I've been at the city over a year and a half. The last session, somebody said, "Welcome to Carson City." And, well, I was born and raised here, so I'm not just new to Carson City. So shoot me an email if you want, write on the back of those sheets and hand them to us. We'll take those as public comment. And you got my email. We're going to be all around. We've got Darren Schultz, Public Works Director, Lee Plumlow, Community Development Director, Steve, Mike, Patrick Pittenger, the Transportation Manager. Who else? Vern, Park Planner. Nick Morano back here if you want to hound him, City Manager. Michael Saloga. So we're all around. We all know different facets of the project. We want to answer your questions, so bring them on up.
What do you say, is Curry Street also by October, or will that start later?
Curry Street, 3rd Street will be included with the Carson Street contract. Curry Street will actually be constructed in 2018 to offset the construction, so it's not all under construction at one time. And then we want to transfer it off of 2017 so that we're not doing it during legislature session.
So just virtually basically what you said is that you're gonna start in February, March of next year and in September, October next year. So virtually in concept, the entire progress of this entire situation will take about 6 months from start to finish?
Yeah. Yeah. We were actually in between here. We had Jeff from Q&D, and we've been talking about that all afternoon. He has some good thoughts as to how we might do that with the lease impact, and maybe providing some of the sidewalk first, so that you have that business access, and then then coming back in and doing the road. We're working through all that to get in and out. A lot of the public comment in years past has been kind of more intense for a shorter time period. It would be better than a 2 construction season impact. So that's why we're heading that way. So.
And then to add to that, part of why we don't have a real defined schedule yet is we want to wait and hear from the business and property owners, what are your real needs?
All that sort of thing. You put that in your cover concrete, you can put it in your permanent art display, your temporary art displays, that might be something to consider for your art. For instance, on the north end of town, with the eagle on the freeway, that's part of what that's about.
Yeah. Not finalized yet. One of the thoughts we